I'd like to first ask Tony Lathrop, our chair, to give some opening remarks. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Alan. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And I want to thank all of you all again for giving your time, especially during these difficult times, to this important effort. You know, I've been in conversations about this starting probably 6 years ago when I was on chairing the Planning Commission. So it's been a long time coming. And we're really getting to the point where we're starting to really see it, and it's really going to come to fruition. And I've said all along that I've been a big proponent of process and being inclusive and rigorous and transparent, and that by doing that, we would come out with an ordinance that would be the envy and a process, an ordinance and a process that would be the envy of everybody in this country, and a great example of what can be done. And you all are really an important part of it. And so I, again, just want to appreciate you for your time and for doing this, and want you to appreciate and understand the bigger picture of what a great thing this is, and how it's coming together. I want to thank the Camiros folks and Alan and Laura and all the staff who are putting these together virtually. It's just a great effort, and I thank you. And I think you can see in Charlotte, in my role with NCDOT, I'm seeing 4 or 5 at least different collaborative efforts going on in Charlotte regarding planning for our future, both in transportation and land use planning and things that are related to that. And so this is incredibly timely, and what you're doing is so important for Charlotte, and really for our whole region, as we, our future is really intertwined all together. So thank you all for doing this. And now I'd like to turn it over to Allison Craig for some more welcome, and also some more particular welcomes for new folks. Allison?
Thanks, Tony. Thank you for your leadership and your vision and your kind words regarding this group. We appreciate everything that you do for us, and your involvement and passion for the work we're doing here. So thank you. And thanks to everyone for being here today. We've got a busy agenda and a lot to cover. And just like Tony said, I just want you to know that the expertise that y'all bring to this process and your time is very much appreciated. We know that there's a lot of things that people are juggling today, from work things, home things, school things, all of that. And just want to recognize that we value your time here, and it's very much appreciated. Before I turn it over to the team, I want to announce we've got 2 new OAC members, Keaudrey and Clayton Seeley. And I'd like them just to take a minute real quick and just introduce themselves to the group. Laura, I don't know if you can unmute those 2 individuals, but if we could start with Key and then move over to Clayton. And just take a minute just to kind of let us know just a brief bit about your background and your interest in helping us in this process.
Well, thank you guys for having me here. I'm very excited. A little bit about myself. I am a real estate broker. I've been in the industry since 2010. I've also am a part of a nationwide development group. I have a radio show on ESPN Charlotte that comes on every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. It's called Coffee and Cash Flow, where we talk all things money. I primarily speak about real estate and development that's going and taking place around Charlotte to educate the public. I'm born and raised here in Charlotte, and I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here, and thanks for joining the team. Clayton.
Hi, my name is Clayton Seeley. I'm a native Charlottean. I just completed the process of moving back to Charlotte from Brooklyn, New York. That said, I've been a active member in the planning and development community for about 6 years, writing with various people in Charlotte, The Observer, The Agenda, Charlotte 5, Charlotte Magazine, and Charlotte Ledger. And I run the social media account CLT Development, which fosters conversation around development, city planning, and cracks a few jokes here and now. And I'm super into open space, responsible planning, and good walkable cities. And I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. Welcome both of y'all to the team. It looks like we've got a really good turnout today, and it's great to have you all here and great to have your participation. And I will turn it over to the team to talk through some of these new districts.
Thank you, Allison. And before we get started, we also have a new member of our team. We have an intern from UNC Chapel Hill, a graduate student, Mariah Wozniak. I put Mariah on the spot. I'm trying to unmute her, but I'm not able to do that. So Laura, can you unmute Mariah? I, for some reason, can't seem to do that. No, I think I just did. Maybe it takes a minute. I just like Mariah to say a couple of words, even though she didn't know this was coming.
That's okay. Thanks, Alan. So like Alan said, my name is Mariah Wozniak. I'm a master's student studying city and regional planning at UNC Chapel Hill. And I will be with the UDO team for the remainder of the summer and then into the fall. So happy to be here and get to work alongside all of you.
Yep, and we've already put Mariah to work, and she's doing great work for us. So let's get started with our program. And as usual, our first few slides are the same slides that we show every meeting, but just as a reminder, there will be a recording of today's meeting available on the UDO playlist of the Planning Department's YouTube channel, and we should have that up by Monday at the latest. And there's a link here on the screen that you can use to access that, or you can just do a search for our YouTube channel and find it. Again, to go over the procedures, the UDO team, as well as our consultants, will narrate the presentation today. We'll be using the chat feature of Zoom for any questions or comments you have. So I think you all know by now how to use chat in Zoom. And our team, our consultants and our UDO team will be trying to keep up with your comments and questions as they're submitted. And for those that we haven't had a chance to answer along the way, we will stop at the end of the presentation and answer and respond to all of those. And so at this point, I think I'd like to turn it over to Laura Harmon to talk about what we're going to be doing. Laura, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you. I just realized that. Thanks, everyone. It looks like we've got a really great turnout today. And we are taking a slightly different approach from the way that we have introduced zoning districts till now. We are going to give you guys an overview of all of the zoning districts for non-residential and mixed use at a fairly high level, but show you all of the place types that relate to non-residential and mixed use zoning districts and the proposed zoning districts that we have for those place types. So Arista and Chris with Camiris are going to help us with that. But what we got into, and I think we were even struggling with this, we went so far into the weeds on the zoning districts and we only had part of the picture. So we thought, why don't we give everyone the full picture of the zoning districts and the different place types and let you guys chew on that a little bit. We'll be back and we'll talk at the end about our schedule with the details of the zoning districts, but wanted to give you that full palette. And then we'll do the same thing later on with the residential zoning districts. And so just to remind you, we have place types coming out of the comprehensive plan, and we have the different non-residential and mixed use place types across the top of this slide. And then you can see the range of zoning districts that we're looking at. And in case you want to know how many we have, we're looking at 19 zoning districts for the 7 place types, including the TOD districts that are already adopted, the 4 TOD districts. And I think, Alan, this is the point at which I'm turning it back over to you. We're going to go, just to let you know, we're going to go quickly through the districts you all have already seen. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from you that we're still working our way through. And so we'll probably be tweaking some of the districts you've already seen, but wanted to first review those districts with you.
Thanks, Laura. Most of you here with us today worked with us as we developed the 4 new TOD districts a couple of years ago, and they were adopted by City Council in April of 2019. And then, as you may recall, we rezoned over 1,500 parcels along the blue line to one of these new TOD districts. And as with any new ordinance, there are bound to be certain issues that you find as you start to use it, and that was true of TOD. And so we have amended the TOD districts twice in October of 29, and again just last month with a fairly major text amendment to address several issues that helped improve the usability and the clarity of the TOD districts. So these districts could be used near rapid transit station areas and in close proximity to streetcar stops. So let's go over the districts after TOD that we've already covered with you. And as Laura said, we're reviewing your feedback, and we're working on some revisions as we've reviewed that feedback. And I just want to reiterate what she said. Your feedback is really important to us. That's why you've signed on with us to help us with this effort. So thank you to everybody that has provided feedback on these districts in the past. And if you haven't had a chance to do so going forward, we really urge you. It's really important, and it does make a difference to us and helps us to make whatever revisions and adjustments that need to be made to these districts. So let's go over the districts that we've covered already. We have a general industrial place type, and we've got 2 proposed zoning districts that would be appropriate to use in the general industrial place types. The first is the IL, or the light industrial district. This is a zoning district that would accommodate warehouse and distribution, as well as light industrial uses that would have little or no external impacts on surrounding properties. These districts could also have some supportive uses, such as restaurants, retail, and so forth. And the most similar comparison with IL would be probably our current I1, which is a light industrial zoning district. And then we have the IG, or general industrial district, and this would be used for heavy industrial uses, more intense industrial uses, and it would require significant buffering from adjacencies because it would be likely to have some sort of external impacts, whether it's noise or fumes or smoke or things like that. Generally, this would be more comparable to our I2, or current general industrial district. We have a light industrial mixed use place type, which is a fairly new concept for Charlotte, and we're suggesting a zoning district for these place types, IMU. IMU would be a mixed use industrial district, This would be used typically in areas that were industrial historically, but are transitioning or anticipated to transition to a broader mix of uses, which may include light industrial as well as others, and even residential in a walkable environment. We envision these, the IMU district could be used for adaptively reusing older industrial structures. A pretty good example is Camp North End. Another example might be Savona Mill in West End. Let me go back. Yeah. Okay. And then we've also covered campus zoning districts. So the campus place type would result in potentially 3 new campus zoning districts. And we'll cover those, IC1, IC2, and OC. IC1 is Institutional Campus District 1. It would be appropriate for use for large-scale campuses in a more suburban location, government, education, medical, social service, those types of campuses. This zoning district would result in probably a significant amount of green space in a typically suburban campus environment with low or mid-rise structures. A good example of this would be Johnson C. Smith University, or perhaps Aldergate, which is an elderly care facility. The IC2 Institutional Campus District is also for large-scale institutional campuses, but in a more urban, walkable environment. A good example might be the Atrium Main Hospital or Central Piedmont Main Campus in Midtown. And our third proposed campus district is OC, or Office Campus. This would be used for large-scale office or research campuses. A portion of the University Research Park might be a place that you could use, potentially the OC district. So we've covered those. We've gotten your feedback on those. We'll be making some adjustments, and we'll be coming back to you at some point to follow up on those districts. But moving forward, we'd like to move into some zoning districts that we have not shared yet with you. And we're going to be looking at these at a high level. Today we're not going to be digging into what the standards for those districts would be, but we're going to be more talking about them on a conceptual level. And we'll start with the commercial districts, and they are derived from the commercial place type, the policies and the commercial place type. The commercial place type is envisioned to be a place where you see goods and services in typically auto-accessible locations, highway commercial. These could include things like shopping centers, standalone retail uses, big box, personal services, hotels, restaurants, gas stations. Typically low-rise buildings with a still yet walkable environment in a public realm that accommodates not only automobiles but bikes and pedestrians as well. They are typically located on high-volume arterial streets, and they're generally auto-oriented. We have a lot of these places now. Our B1, our B2 districts, probably. But going forward, we anticipate fewer of these types of areas, but still we will have places where this is what it is, and we need zoning districts to allow and to accommodate these kinds of places. So we are proposing 2 commercial zoning districts to be used in the commercial place type. Our CG, our general commercial district, and our CR, our regional commercial district. And here is where I'd like to pass it off to Kamiros to talk about these two zoning districts in a little more detail.
Thank you, Alan. So as Alan mentioned, we've got two kind of these commercial districts. The first is the general commercial, and I think that photograph you see there on the side kind of gives you a good idea of what we're kind of considering a general commercial area. These are located, as it says, key intersections or along arterial streets. You see things here like your drive-through restaurants like the Wendy's, and I think that's a Bojangles, I'm not sure. So it's really this kind of smaller area, smaller lot development of general commercial that is more auto-oriented, that, you know, people are generally getting there by car. But just to say, when we say auto-oriented, we're not ignoring issues of walkability and pedestrian connections. The idea is over time that these could redevelop to be more pedestrian friendly, to have more connections that's not just getting there by car. And you can see things like sidewalks and kind of where the buildings are positioned along these kind of corridors and nodes where these types of developments are. And obviously over time, they may develop into more mixed use type developments. But the idea here is to really acknowledge that you've got this type of development going on along these arterial streets and at these key intersections. Next, the regional commercial. Again, as Alan pointed out, this is looking at significantly larger, again, kind of those auto-oriented things. As you see there, the IKEA, when you need to take your car to the IKEA to get a blurg, you know, these are the types of uses that we're looking at. It could be things like a Costco as well. And they're really kind of these large lot developments that users do tend to take their cars to. And again, we're not looking just to keep these as auto-oriented. Standards would be built in to create compatibility with the uses that are around them, to kind of make them more pedestrian connected, so that, again, over time, they may develop into, you know, something more mixed use in certain areas, but others, you know, it's the acknowledgement that you've got these areas of these regional commercial uses that people come from all over the city to get the goods and services that they need, whether it be an IKEA, like I said, a Costco, or large auto dealerships as well.
Okay. Let me get my mouse on the right screen. Bear with me here. Thank you. Okay, there we go. So moving on from the commercial, we move into our centers, and we have three centers place types. We'll start with the neighborhood center. The neighborhood center is a pedestrian-friendly place. It's an activity center where residents can access shopping and services within a short walk or drive from neighborhoods. The land uses would typically include retail, restaurants, personal services, institutional, multifamily residential, and offices, possibly even some auto-oriented uses along the edges of neighborhood centers. These places are characterized by low-rise buildings in a pedestrian-oriented environment. We want direct access from neighborhoods to encourage walking and cycling. We expect low traffic, slow traffic, I should say, and also low traffic. We want these areas to have good pedestrian and cycling facilities. So in our neighborhood center place types, we're only proposing one zoning district. It would be the neighborhood center district.
All right, I'll take over from here. I'm assuming I can be heard.
Yep.
All right, great. So as Alan was mentioning, the neighborhood center really is designed to be sort of that easy, walkable, pedestrian-oriented sort of mixed-use environment that is really kind of in close proximity and snugged into the kind of existing neighborhood fabric. This is the place, you know, where you're going to walk and get a cup of coffee, walk and pick up your dry cleaning, really sort of lower scale commercial and service uses integrated really with that residential fabric. So also thinking about how we can kind of encourage a variety of uses in here. So thinking about some, you know, lower intensity multifamily development that might be allowed within these areas as well. So they're really kind of intended to be sort of a small scale, you know, commercial neighborhood shopping environment where people that live within easy walking distance are really going to be able to meet their daily needs.
Thanks, Chris. We'll move on to the next center, which is the Community Activities Center. And let me mention here that below the Community Activities Center and all centers, you'll see the new zoning districts that we're proposing that would be appropriate for each of these centers. We've also are suggesting that TOD, one of our 4 TOD districts, could be used in any center for locations that were in close proximity to either a rapid transit station or a streetcar stop. So we don't have a specific transit-oriented development place type, but the TOD districts could be used in a center, again, provided that you're within a certain distance of either a light rail stop or a streetcar stop. So let's move on to the Community Activity Center and generally what that's all about. These are places that are primarily commercial and residential within a 10 or 15 minute drive of neighborhoods. Typical uses would be retail, restaurant, entertainment, personal services, along with possibly some multifamily and office. Low to mid-rise buildings, again, in a pedestrian-oriented development. Although near transit stations, these areas could be more intensely developed as long as they were well served by rapid transit. And these places would support a 15-minute neighborhood and a park once environment. They would be well connected, have small blocks, and be walkable, highly walkable. So for the Community Activity Center, we are proposing two new zoning districts, Community Activity Centers 1 and 2. And I will pass it back to Camiros.
Thanks. So I think it's kind of easiest to envision these community activity center districts, the 1 and 2, as kind of gradations of sort of the same thing. So thinking about Community Activity Center 1, this is really designed for those areas that might be sort of transitioning toward sort of a more mature mixed use character. So we're really envisioning, kind of a moderate intensity mix of retail, restaurant, service uses. There could also be some residential or office uses in these places, but right now, they're really designed sort of more in terms of an auto orientation. So as Alan said, this is the CAC1 district is really designed to get us kind of toward the first step toward that sort of 15-minute neighborhood environment and increasing the walkability and the quality of design in these areas. So the CAC1 district is really built to allow a little bit more flexibility in terms of things like design and site elements. And by that, we mean there might be some more flexibilities in terms of things like parking amount that's permitted or required, or parking location. And we want to make sure that, we're taking those first steps toward accommodating multiple modes of transportation, including, people that might be able to walk to these areas, as well as the people that are driving from a little bit further away. And then the CAC2 would be sort of that final step in terms of the sort of the maturation of the community activity center. So these are really more moderate intensity mix of uses. Again, it's sort of that same mix. So things like retail, restaurant, entertainment, mixed in with residential and office. A little bit more height might be appropriate in these areas, as well as sort of stricter or tighter controls on the design of buildings, as well as their placement and other site elements like parking. So these are really designed to be sort of that next step in pedestrian orientation, that next step in creating that comfortable walking environment, and really sort of building up the density where it makes sense. And just to reinforce what Alan said too, these districts can also be complemented by the TOD district. So as you're looking at these and you're trying to make sense of where they might go, I think, anywhere where there is solid transit service, you can imagine one of these might be appropriate, or one of the TOD districts might be appropriate as well.
And then finally, our last activity center is our Regional Activity Center. And we are proposing 3 zoning districts that could be used in one of the in a regional activity center, as well as one of our TOD districts. So the regional activity center is a major employment location and cultural destination. Think Uptown as the primary example. Vertical mix of buildings, multifamily office, retail, restaurant, so forth, institutional. A highly urban form, mid to high rise building form. Again, a pedestrian oriented and transit friendly environment. We envision good transit access to these areas or this area, a park once environment or a park not at all environment for transit users. A very well connected street block, small blocks, highly walkable, good pedestrian facilities, frequent opportunities to cross arterial streets. So we're kind of thinking again, the regional activity center would probably be, well, would definitely include Uptown, and we're not sure where else we might map this type of place. But we are, again, proposing 3 zoning districts, and you see them on the screen here. I will let Camiros take over from here.
Thank you, Alan. So the first of the 3 districts we've proposed is the RAC, the Regional Activity Center District. Again, kind of as the place type describes, this is a moderate to high intensity development. You've got shopping, you've got residential, you may have offices. It's very well connected. It creates these kind of communities within them. They're connected to the neighborhoods. There's numerous ways for people to get there. And again, it may be you get there and then basically you're there all day. You're not moving your car. If you got there by car, you're spending all day there. You can see examples of it designed this way, where you've got connections both internal to how it's designed, and then as well as out to the other kind of, public connections. So it's very pedestrian oriented, multimodal oriented, and really has this vibrant vibrant mix of uses there that accommodate a lot of different things going on at the same time. The next is probably the one district that I think everybody can picture in their mind pretty easily. It's the Uptown core. It is the most intense mixed-use development within the city. So it's Uptown. And it's really continuing that kind of high-intensity, tall buildings, vibrant, pedestrian-oriented city center. It's kind of the heart of the city. Whenever we work on these zoning codes, it really is, when you get to the downtown, it's really the most vibrant, most intense area of the city. And so again, kind of like when you're looking at, say, the TOD, the highest level of the TOD, it's that kind of level of the high quality of design that's required, the way everything has to address the street, and really focusing on kind of maintaining that core that you've already got in place and really supporting it and enhancing it as it continues to develop. And then finally, the last of these regional activity centers is the Uptown Edge. And what we see is, as the core, once you have that, you have to kind of feather out from the edges of the core, and rather than kind of abruptly transitioning to a different type of district, we've created this Uptown Edge district. And this would serve as a transition between that intense core and the adjacent areas surrounding it. Again, it's working to keep that pedestrian orientation there, make sure it stays connected as it goes into these other areas, provide some level of compatibility with the neighborhoods that may be surrounding Uptown, and really looking at a way to kind of transition from the intensity to the lower intensity things that may be around it, but maintaining that character and maintaining that fabric that the core has already established.
So I think that wraps up our overview of not only the districts, the industrial and campus districts that we've covered in previous meetings, but the proposed new districts. And I'd like to turn it back to Laura at this point.
Thanks, Alan. Well, I think we've gotten through this a lot more quickly than we anticipated. So maybe if we could talk through a few of the chat items that we have, and you can see again the breadth of districts that we're looking at, and then we're going to talk about next steps. And I see some more chat coming in. So also would like some help from Arista and Chris on answering these. I've tried to keep up with you guys as we've gone through. And the first thing, and there are a couple of folks that actually brought this up about JCSU and whether the IC1 is too suburban an environment for JCSU. And I think that maybe this is an interesting conversation. We're going to obviously, as we develop districts, have to make sure that we calibrate them correctly. But I think one thing that we're struggling with is we really don't want these to be suburban districts. So it may be some of our nomenclature and how we're describing these and making sure that we get standards that say these aren't our super intense institutional campuses, but they are still going to be urban and walkable and so forth. And whether or not we have that right with JCSU, I think will be a really good conversation. I don't know, Arista and Chris, if I've mangled that or kind of what your thinking is on the difference between the two campus districts. Would appreciate your input.
I don't think you mangled it. I mean, I don't know what else I mean, we agree with everything you just said. So I don't know, Chris, different opinion?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I think that, you kind of summarized our thinking at this point, Laura, pretty well.
Yeah,
And
I think that's good. I think that's good feedback.
And Eric actually asked a question, which I think, Alan, if you can help with, and Eric, let me know if I've got this right, but said, could we get the slides up for the topics we're talking about? So as we go through the chat questions, if we can get to the right slide, is that what you were thinking, Eric? And feel free to just speak up if you want.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just as we go through, like when we were just talking about the IC1, just so we can have more details when we're going over them.
Sure.
As we go through chat questions. Thank you.
Yeah, just bear with me because you may see a kind of a mess on the screen while I'm trying to get back to the right slide. But I will try to do that. Okay.
Okay. And then David Walters asked about the IMU district. Well, actually provided some feedback saying it might be, there might be a chance to use it for some parts of lower South End that's swamped with apartments. And I think, yeah, we'll take guidance from the comprehensive plan as to where the different place types go. So we've got, I think Elise and Kathy are both on and hearing that feedback of where that place type might be applied. And I think it might be an interesting conversation of industrial mixed use versus the TOD districts as we continue to move forward. I don't know, Alan, Arista, Chris, anything to add on that? Or David, did I hit your question or missing anything?
Can I say something or?
I think with this, absolutely. I think we've got
okay, because I'm unmuted, right? You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I think the point I'm making is fairly obvious, and I'm sure you all get it. But the reason people are attracted to places like South End is it's got a blend of older, interesting stuff and odd uses cropping up here and there, which is, you know, it's like catnip, you know, to developers. But of course, that, you know, the logic of development erases the things that attract development in the first place. And the historic heritage of South End, the South End area, such as it is, North End also, I mean, those two areas, probably more than any others, still carry elements both of our historical heritage, but as importantly, they are breeding grounds for new development. And I'm sure many, many others, would be sad to see that character sort of papered over by, you know, the sort of even good generic development. So what I'm wondering is, can the provisions of the UDO be used in a more activist sense in order to protect that heritage as a valid, a valuable piece of our economic future? I'll shut up now.
Yeah, that was great. It would be interesting to kind of look specifically, David, at where you're thinking and what zoning we have on the ground now. I'm wondering if some of it we've already taken to TOD, but maybe some of the TOD TR areas, maybe, or CC areas could go to IMU as we look down the road.
I'm thinking about areas like Distribution Street, south of Remount. There's a few blocks there of valid, lively, enterprising small businesses and manufacturing, as well as townhomes, and a couple of restaurants have moved in. I mean, nothing is static, obviously, but at the moment it's pretty interesting down there, much more so than, you know, a mile up the rail trail where it's all 4-5-story apartments. That's all I'm saying. It's a hard question, I know.
If I could interject for a second too. Sorry, Laura.
Yeah, no, I thank you, David. And I was also going to suggest, maybe because we do have time, if people want to raise their hands and chat, because I think I saw Eric raising his hand. So it'll be easiest for us to track you if you do the little hand raising thing through Zoom, but definitely we saw Eric. But go ahead, Chris, and then Eric will come back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge what David had said, you know, about these being sort of the interesting, vibrant places that a lot's going on, a lot's changing, but that you also sort of want to acknowledge the history and the character that's there and make sure that you're doing something that's sort of actively allowing for that mix that creates that interesting places to happen and protecting sort of that character. And that's really what we're trying to get at with the IMU districts, through things like, you know, really kind of incentivizing the reuse of older structures for a whole variety of uses that, you know, you previously might not have seen. Whereas, you know, previously one of those older industrial structures might have just been torn down and replaced with a multifamily building. In that type of situation, we really want to kind of allow a mix of uses and design the standards in a way that we're encouraging sort of that, you know, it's kind of like the dirty, funky, you know, mix with like the new modern stuff, you know, the places that are interesting places that you want to spend time. We're trying to encourage that kind of mixture through the standards of the IMU district.
And I know, Eric, do you want to jump in now?
Yep. Yep, if we have time. I just wanted to add to what David said, and then maybe take it a step further. So, you know, these parcels we remapped, right, with, say, if you know, took David's suggestion with IMU, at some point, though, I think, and the same thing could go with the commercial, you know, you're trying to encapsulate these zoning types for what currently is on the ground, and then put better standards in place, right, for like commercial. But, you know, I mentioned earlier that, you know, maybe limiting those to certain areas. So I think the concept is what happens after they get mapped and some developer, whoever just comes in to apply for rezoning. So, you know, if we went through proactively, put IMU in places that we wanted to preserve proactively, but then somebody comes back in and wants to, you know, rezone that again, and it's maybe not the appropriate for that. What are we going to kind of do with being able to not police it, but, you know, and then preserve what the initial spirit of all of this work that we're putting through in is to try to keep some of those things from going downhill, especially in some of these zoning types that I see as kind of like being transitional or not archaic, but, you know, older standards to kind of fit in what we have a lot in Charlotte. And then these more modern, nicer zoning types that we're really trying to encourage and we want in more places.
I'll start, and I don't know if Alicia and Kathy want to jump in. So this is kind of a place where the comp plan and the UDO will really work together. And this is, you know, what is going to guide zoning in the future? How do we deal with proposals for zoning that may be inconsistent with the comp plan mapping of place types? And I think we're even still, as a staff, thinking about what the proposal for handling that would be. So I hate to say, I don't think we have a really great, fully baked answer today, but something that's being considered. And I don't know if Felicia and Kathy are still on, if you can jump in if there's something you want to say about that as well.
So Eric, I'm sure you guys may have been following the comp plan process and know that we were talking about place types and the process for mapping them, and prior to the zoning ordinance being adopted, and then mapping those zoning ordinance. So in terms of place types, establishing what places should go where, that will then in turn guide what districts should go where. We plan to map those in a way that we would do community area planning, and that's having those in-depth discussions as we're talking about mapping the place types with the community. So it's a more granular approach to looking at where those place types will go. To David's point, there are some areas of a community that we know we have to kind of have that very granular conversation about what places are appropriate here, where we want to preserve things. So that's the process that we're thinking about doing that. We'll outline that within the comp plan, how that will happen in terms of place type mapping once the plan's adopted. And then it will give the zoning ordinance team, the UDO team, more guidance as to how and where the zoning ordinance or zoning districts will be mapped. I hope that helps to clarify things a little bit.
Yep, that sounds all great. It's just more maybe coming up with something after all that where we preserve, because we don't want to go through all this process and then it, obviously it's going to change too. We want to make sure there's flexibility. It's just maybe there's opportunity to create a process for after all that's done, if something goes against all of the work that the comp plan and then eventually the UDO mapping that, just something that we have some sort of more regulation or policy for sure, but just something that, almost like the TOD has the adjustment board, something I'm just throwing out there, just something that, that doesn't get out of control and kind of goes against all of citizens' input in the comp plan process.
Thanks, Eric. I think we're all looking at how we're going to deal with that. And I think as some of us that deal with the rezoning process and plan consistency and how do we maintain the integrity of the plans through the comp plan and the plans that come out of that. David mentioned, and I want to make sure that I have this tied to the right thing. Hotels clearly need a good walkable environment. And I see Warren has raised his hand. So let me go to Warren first, because you may have something on what we were just talking about. And we can come back to David's comment.
No, thanks, Laura. I'll take advantage of it, but no, this was something completely different. This was picking up on a topic from our initial conversation about industrial. Could you shift back to the slide that showed all the place types and all the zoning districts?
Sure.
I now have an idea, because there we go. You may recall when we were talking about about the industrial, I was a little worried from a communications perspective about having a place type with the word light in it and a zoning district with the word light in it that didn't align with that place type. And again, I'm trying to look at this from the perspective of how to communicate about these place types and zoning districts to people who haven't been part of this process, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, who are just coming to it cold. It's something that I've come to appreciate in public policy, how folks who don't know the background can interpret what we who've worked on it for years understand,
Yeah.
they can interpret it differently. But I didn't have a good proposal for an alternative, but I think I see it now, where for the zoning districts under general industrial, instead of light and general, they could be 1 and 2, industrial 1 and 2. It carries the theme of the 1s and the 2s that you're proposing in the other areas, and it eliminates the potential confusion between a district with the word light and a place type with the word light in it. So I just wanted to throw that out there while I had the opportunity. Thanks.
Thanks.
Or another solution would be, Laura, just to eliminate light from industrial mixed use.
That I get behind that too. I just didn't know. I was right.
Yeah.
I recognize I'm on the ordinance advisory committee, not the place type advisory committee. So I wanted to stay in my wheelhouse.
Listen, I'll take it though. Thank you.
Well, so I'll even throw in, Alicia, for general industrial. What if we just made that place type industrial? But lots of different ways to play this, and we definitely are trying to capture these things. And I would just ask, and I haven't been to the bottom of the chat as we started talking, but so that'll help us, though we are recording this to go back, but Walter, Warren, because I see something from Walter, if you don't mind just typing this in also, so we'll remember to go back and look at this.
Will do.
Thank you. And so David Walters had talked about hotels clearly needing a good walkable environment, and we agree. So we really see hotels typically, well, there may be a few places, but mostly in centers, but occasionally in commercial. And commercial is more auto oriented than centers, but we still want to make sure that we are putting in a good pedestrian environment in there. So the test is going to be, when you look at the standards, see, have we done a good balance with between auto and something that is also pedestrian oriented. And I think someone else has already talked about that. I actually believe it was Eric, who's like, hey, are we going to have as much of this zoned commercial in the future? And our anticipation is that we're going to have a lot more center on the ground and less commercial, but there are still some places in our community where we really need these more auto-oriented uses. And we talked a little bit with Camiras yesterday, and maybe ask Chris and Arista to talk about that a little bit as well. Not to put you on the spot, but.
Regarding the idea of the general commercial and the regional commercial kind of phasing out over time.
Yeah. What are you seeing as you guys are working on districts in different places?
So the intent, basically, as we're working in different places, I mean, and as you can see, the national trend really is that people want to transition to more of a mixed use environment, a walkable environment, places where people want to be that have character. So that's kind of an overarching goal. And the acknowledgement is that based on existing conditions, there tend to be a lot more of these auto-oriented places, whether it be that kind of corridor commercial or those regional big box users. So there is an acknowledgement that they exist. But the idea is generally, and everywhere where we're working, and what we were discussing with staff yesterday is that we don't see this being put more and more on the map. Quite frankly, it's acknowledging the character that's there, but over time, and with standards that are in place for those, that they're really going to start to transition more to being centers. And we're not going to be going out and mapping new areas of general commercial or regional commercial. It's kind of going to dwindle down over time, which is what we've seen, because again, places want to get away from, I'm just our community is characterized by strict commercial for 4 miles, and nobody really wants to be known as that. So the idea is that it goes down over time, but we have to acknowledge it's there now. We have to, as you can see, what we've tried to do with CAC1 and CAC2, provide a means of transition. So maybe I go from CG to CAC1 and over time then get to that CAC2 area. And that's really what you're seeing. Now, granted, this takes time, but it is a goal most places are striving towards. Most places aren't going into zoning ordinance updates going, we really need to accommodate more big box users. It's really not a thing that's happening. It's really transitioning areas into better development forms over time.
Thanks, Arista. We've got more questions coming in. I feel like I'm on a talk show or something, or our call-in show. So I may skip over some of these, trying to get us through most of the big comments, but a few more comments from folks talking about JCSU, and also Brent had a really interesting comment about in the IMU and whether or not we would continue to have that opportunity even after the industrial's gone. An interesting question. Probably comp plan will help to figure that out. Walter said, what about small auto dealerships? And I do think we're going to have to make sure we look at that and accommodate that in certain locations in commercial as opposed to simply the large ones. And we'll have that discussion and bring something back to you guys. David mentioned a bit about mid-rise buildings and neighborhood centers. And that's interesting because how we all define mid-rise, it may be different. But if you look back at place types, I think that's what we're following. And if there are concerns about the heights for neighborhood centers, may want to, sorry, Alan, I'm challenging you now.
Sorry about that.
May want to and provide feedback to the place type, the comprehensive plan team on that. So let's see, comp plan, comprehensive plan. Alicia and Kathy, how often are you guys thinking that that will be reviewed and potentially updated?
Are you asking about the comp plan process in general? Overall comp plan?
The plan, my understanding is that you'd come back and refresh it every X number of years. And maybe I'm sorry if I'm catching you off guard. Maybe I've misspoken on that.
Yeah, so a little bit off guard, but that's okay. So what we're thinking is that we would do the comp plan, have it adopted in April 2021, if all things go as planned. And then soon thereafter, we would begin our place type mapping process later that summer or fall. That would then begin our community planning type exercise. And so then once the plan's adopted in April, every year we'll track and monitor the comp plan policies, implementation, do other types of planning exercises like the playbook that was done for West Boulevard, strategic type planning, as well as area planning. Every 5 years, do an assessment and then comp plan update every 10. So tracking and monitoring every year, area planning in between those years, 5-year assessment, 10-year redo. That's in my head what we're talking about, and we'll discuss with our advisory group in our next meeting in August 26th.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Lucy, put you on the spot. This kind of came out of, how would we deal with some of these areas? And just want to keep saying that we're really, this application of zoning is really going to follow the comprehensive plan and the place type mapping. So the comprehensive plan process, area plan process, whatever Alicia and her team move forward with, will guide us where we should be making some zoning changes initiated by the planning department. Let's see, Clayton brought up a question about how neighborhood center would coexist with the PED overlay. And we actually are not planning on carrying forward the PED overlay district as a district. Near and dear to my heart, because we did this a number of years ago, but replacing it with particularly the neighborhood center district. Possibly in some cases it may be some other districts as well, but we think that the centers district will have a lot of, and maybe have even enhanced some of what is in PED. So I'm scrolling down, bear with me. talked a little bit about the reassessments. I want to ask David Walters if he wouldn't mind. You had a comment about the Community Activity Center 1 district, reminding you of a mixed-use development that you had worked on. Could you talk to the group a little bit about that, since that's really
very briefly.
information?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's at Gilead Road at exit 23 on I-77, on the west side of the highway as you pull off, heading away from downtown Huntersville. Some years ago, there were competing, landowners and developers. And so the town called me in to basically do a small area plan very quickly, working within the zoning code, which we'd already written, which was a form-based code. And so what we were able to do with the agreement of the landowners and the town was to create a development pattern that had block sizes that accommodated surface parking then, still today, but those within a street grid, loose street grid, that was lined with buildings. So you had embryonic urban room type conditions, so that at some future date, the surface parking could be transformed into some other denser use, whether it's more parking, unlikely now perhaps. And so it also, the code we wrote mandated connections to adjacent development. So it's more than just a mixed use pod at the freeway. It links back into other developments. It's pretty straightforward. But that might even be it. I don't know. I haven't been up there for about a year or so.
No, David, I'm pretty familiar with the development you're talking about. The one on the screen is the Park Road shopping center.
Okay. Oh yes, I know that one. That's one of the better ones. But the one up at Gilead is also anchored by Harris Teeter, and then there was a Food Lion or Bilo, I think. So, I mean, all I'm saying is that these CAC ones, with just a little bit of text in there, or an example like this one, shows that it's not just parking in front of the store, that it is part of a more catalytic urban framework. That's all I'm really saying.
Thanks for that explanation. That's really helpful. A little bit more, Nate had asked about how have the district's heights and densities considered population growth of Charlotte. And again, this is kind of where the comprehensive plan and the UDO, where the UDO is building off the comprehensive plan, that really is happening through the work through the comprehensive plan and looking at those aspects of it. And I'm going to put in a shameless plug for the comprehensive plan. If you're interested in some of these issues that we're saying, hey, the comprehensive plan is doing that, definitely take the opportunity to participate in the sessions that Alicia and her team have. It's a great opportunity to input on those and understand how the vision for the community is developing with the community engagement. Alicia, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, or just let that go, or but give you the opportunity if you want to say anything.
So we are introducing our next virtual exercise next week, and we'll share that with Alan so he can share it with the team and they can participate. What we will be sharing is our equitable growth framework, which provides an equity lens of how we develop the policy, projects, and programs within the comprehensive plan. So it's some really interesting metrics and data to see where we are today and where we need to go to achieve the vision we have outlined for our community. So look forward to that. And thanks, Halara, for sharing.
Thanks, Alicia. also a comment about the industrial mixed use district, and whether, that there are a lot of uses other than industrial, if I'm interpreting this correctly. And yes, I think we feel like that district has a lot of opportunity for probably our greatest mix of uses that we're talking about for any of the districts. But as you guys look at the standards, as we go through this, will be good to see if you guys think we got it right or not. So let's see. I'd like to ask Derek if he would be willing to talk a little bit about his comment about place types and as being aspirational. And I hate to put you on the spot, but it would help me to understand at least kind of what your thinking is. And maybe he stepped away. So
you said Gerard? My bad.
It's Derek Dittner.
Oh.
But Gerard, you're welcome. If you know what he's talking about. Yeah, Gerard, again, thanks and we've got to go back, and we'll have to be, as we go through this process, looking at the institutional campus districts and getting y'all's feedback on those.
Yeah.
So Nate also talking about Camp North End fully transitioning out of industrial when it's built out, and that may be just that it evolves from a planning and zoning perspective over time.
Can I interject real quick about Camp North End? So
Sure.
let's say, like I've seen their master plan. They plan 4 multifamily buildings, numerous new construction. They're going to rehab the rest of the industrial buildings on site. Will they need to rezone out of IMU at some point, or would IMU actually consider those? I know it said can include residential and more creative uses. However, if it's going to be intensely that direction, would they need to rezone in the future, or would that be allowed to remain as IMU? Because it feels more like eventually it'll be more like a community center.
I don't know that it would have to come out of IMU, but I would be interested to see what other folks on the team say from their perspective, Arista and Chris and Alan.
Well, just to chime in on that, just from our experience with IMU districts, even if, the name says industrial, but even if over time as they develop and kind of that industrial character starts to kind of go away a little bit, many of the times they may remain IMU because they've got these abilities to adaptively reuse the buildings that are built in. So what was formerly industrial, that building's a real character-giving building, and the IMU is designed in such a way that you can more easily adaptively reuse that industrial building. So many times they'll stay in IMU, and there's nothing that prevents it from having industrial come back in. Because we've seen areas that have kind of faded from industrial, they've changed to these other uses, they've stayed IMU, and then some industrial uses said, hey, we can really reuse these buildings and come back. So there's no guarantee that once it kind of changes into more of a center that it will have to be a center. It's really kind of, you got to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Kind of what are you trying to promote in these areas? Does keeping it IMU allow it to kind of invite these uses back after some of the original set is left?
So what you're saying is the original buildings, like the Ford factory, the missile silo factory, or the missile factories, et cetera, that would remain IMU, but then the out parcels of the like 76 acres, that's pretty much 2/3 open space right now, would be zoned to other uses, or those would retain that same zoning?
It's all based on policy and kind of what you want to see developed there, which would be coming out of the place types. There is IMU is not necessarily restricted to just something that was developed as industrial. Zoning districts don't exist in a vacuum. And if the idea is to allow that area to develop, it doesn't have to be that you're adaptively reusing buildings. It's that you're allowing the area around it to develop with this variety of uses that's kind of got this weird, as Chris said, kind of a dirty, funky mix of uses that's going on there. So it could be that it stays. I can't guarantee, I can't tell you if it will or won't. But there are areas when they're zoned to IMU, it zones vacant parcels around it with the intent of it kind of creating this new environment that's got this core of old industrial, and then new stuff comes in, including maybe some new industrial as well.
Okay, thank you.
And just quickly following on this, Teresa had mentioned incentivizing adaptive reuse, and we're really thinking that IMU will accommodate adaptive reuse, and that's one of the priorities for that district. But again, we're putting stuff out here. You guys are going to see in the not too distant future specifics on these districts, and we're going to want to know if you guys think that we have hit it or not on some of these. So looking forward to your feedback. Jen asked, will there be requirements to connect to sidewalks, pedestrian infrastructure, and will new infrastructure be created during development? Yes and yes. You're going to see the connection, the connections from buildings to the public infrastructure, public sidewalk system in zoning, and then when we bring you after zoning later in the fall, the subdivision streets and infrastructure chapter, you'll see how new infrastructure will occur through development. And more messages keep coming in. I keep thinking I'll get caught up. South Park listed, Derek mentioned, along with North Lake. Actually, we're considering South Park and North Lake in the long term, if I have this right, and I hope I haven't misspoken, for the comprehensive plan team and the regional centers as being more than shopping centers and becoming their smaller, as you said, city centers. They may still have that shopping center, but we see it as being more and really being that significant activity center. So yes, I think it's sometimes hard to explain some of these because as we're giving you potential locations, sometimes they're not what we see them being in the long term. And we're at the beginning of the transition instead of the end of a transition of an area. In looking at what Gerard has mentioned about the new residential development mixed with historic places in West End. And yes, absolutely. We see that as a center, greater mix of uses with that residential coming in, and we will follow along with what Alicia and her team does as far as place type mapping to get the right zoning in place. Philip asked, I hope and assume we will do another realignment rezoning like we did for TID as we move into the new code. Yes, after the comprehensive plan, place types, UDO are in place, we anticipate that it will be a significant effort, let's put it that way, that will be part of really implementing the UDO. Will place types be mapped before the new zoning districts? Yes. Before the new zoning districts are applied, yes, they will be. Talking about kind of how the rezoning process fits in, it would be interesting again as that is further defined. But the intent is to take our new zoning districts after the UDO is adopted and align them with the comprehensive plan policy. We talked about Warren's. While David Walters gave some more comments on heights, so we'll definitely be looking into that and having you guys look at it. Will any of the existing districts convert to new districts, or will the new districts completely replace the current districts? Yes and yes. We will probably like we did with TOD, have some translation, and we'll also then be looking at doing alignment rezoning for in addition. Yes, Derek, thank you. That is Sylvan Terrace, not Parkwood Shopping Center. I think we're getting close to the end. Looking to see if there's anything. Oh, yes, and Alan and said that. Yeah, Eric, an interesting point about districts' availability for rezoning and the characteristics of those. So certainly rezoning will probably be different after we have UDO. And I think we're about to the end. Warren said, IMU's CAC conversation. Would it be possible for an IMU development to evolve into a non-conforming use? Maybe not to evolve into a non-conforming use, but we could have uses that through zoning will have to deal with conformity, and we worked on that with Todd. Some will have to work on that with UDO implementation as well. David mentioned some things about malls. Interesting to see where that will go, particularly as we evolve post-COVID. And so I think Eric has probably gotten us to the point where we need to, and Alan, we have lost the presentation. Where we go to next steps. If you could go to the next slide. So here's where we are. We've given you a high overview today, and we want, if you have questions about the districts, we want to, the overall high level, what districts we're proposing. You think they're not matching with place types, or based on place types we're missing a district, or we have a district we don't need. We will have an optional drop-in on the 13th of August. And we'll be giving you some homework, as we always do. We will be bringing back the details, and it's a lot of information, but you'll be able to see all of these districts together on September 10th, including uses. After that, then we'll again be looking for feedback in that time frame. We'll also be bringing you all the neighborhood districts, and then our general development standards, and wrapping up through late October with the zoning component of the UDO, and moving on to subdivision, streets, and infrastructure. So what happens after today, if we go to the next slide, is we will be next week emailing you the non-residential and mixed-use place type sheets, this presentation, and a link for feedback. And I'll just say again, the feedback that you all do outside in the meetings is really important for us to track comments, and we've gotten some really valuable feedback, but maybe not as much as we had hoped from the group. So that is really a great place to record your comments, and to it's what we use as a resource for reviewing what we're doing and making adjustments. That's it. We're, I know Arista and Chris, I think maybe you've already had to drop off. Anything final before, I don't know if Ty has made it on, before wrapping up.
Yes, I am here. Sorry, I wasn't able to make it at the beginning. I ran late, but I really want to appreciate all of you. Lots of engaging questions. I was trying to track them myself as Laura was going through them. Definitely lots to like about this, but also lots of questions. So the beauty of it is that we have that working option coming up. I looked at the number of participants, almost 50. So really, really encouraging, and really also want to welcome 2 new participants. I saw that Clayton was giving Laura a hard time there. Just kidding. But thank you so much for agreeing to come in at this point. There's a lot of education for you to do, obviously, because you're just joining, but there's a lot of room for that. Alan will definitely support you as you have questions, but there's a lot on the website as well that can really inform you of how far we've come. All right, I want to say thank you. I made a few notes to myself also from some of your questions that I will be making sure that we follow up on those with our team. I want to thank Laura and the team as well for putting this together, and thank you to Camaros for their support as always. But as OAC members, your support and help is definitely needed so we can get to the end of this and know that it reflects everyone's thought process. Thanks, Tony, for stepping in at the beginning, and Alison, I appreciate that. So once again, I want to say thank you to everybody. I hope you have a very safe and healthy rest of your day and the rest of the week.
Thank you, Ty. And just, again, we appreciate all the time that everyone's put in. For past meetings, if you want to go back and look at any of those, we do have those on Planning, Design, and Development's YouTube page, the most recent ones, and then earlier than that on our Facebook page. And of course, any of our team members, if you want to reach out to us, we would be glad to chat. So thanks again today for joining us. We appreciate it. Bye.